Prey. Written by Savage Tempest. Chapter 1. Hollow. A hollow life. Hollow job.
Carter!
Avery groaned to himself. He had sensed Shapiro's dark presence lurking earlier, but he had hoped, foolishly, that for once the universe would show mercy and keep the witch away from his cubicle. Witch. Shapiro's pet name and only spoken in hushed whispers, since there were cameras and listening devices pretty much everywhere in the office, including inside their cubicles. Possibly the bathrooms too, though thankfully Avery had never found one. The sounds of tapping computer keys gradually stopped as the customer relations supervisor approached. Avery dared a peek over his cubicle as Shapiro stalked closer, weaving her way between desks, heels snapping against the cold faux marble floor. At the cubicle adjacent to him, Wilson shook his head in mock pity.
Sorry, man. Maybe you can get unemployment.
Avery ignored him. A person had a better chance at growing a unicorn horn on their forehead than getting unemployment insurance. His heart began to race as he frantically tried to recall if he'd done anything to warrant Shapiro's attention. His eyes darted around his cramped cubicle, scanning for any sign of disorder. Stack of reports neatly aligned, his company-issued stylus perfectly parallel to the edge of the desk. Trash bin empty. Everything seemed in place. Avery's gaze lingered on the small, vintage frame holding Marigold's photograph. He silently pleaded with her image for patience and the strength to keep his big mouth shut. Shapiro materialized at his cubicle entrance. The woman was a collection of sharp angles and jutting bones, crowned by a severe bun resting precariously on top of her head. Her eyes, cold and calculating, swept over Avery's workspace in a single glance.
Carter!
She began, her voice as brittle as autumn leaves.
We had to let Green go this morning. Too many sick time requests.
She paused, letting the implication hang between them.
I need you to go down to the bunker and do an inventory.
Avery glanced at the time display on his screen. But it's almost quitting time. Shapiro's lips curled into a cold smile.
Oh, that's all right if you don't want to help Stars and Stripes out, Mr. Carter. I'm sure we can find at least 100 or so people who are literally dying to do the job for you.
The threat, thinly veiled as it was, landed like a punch to the chin. They both knew there were 10 times that many people who were desperate for his position, especially in this economy. Pretending to be duly humbled, Avery imagined Shapiro in his old kickboxing class, picturing the satisfying thud of his roundhouse kick smacking into her bony side. If only he could still afford the classes.
Well?
She snarled. No problem, Ms. Shapiro. Avery even managed to smile. I'll head down right away.
Excellent,
she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness.
Oh, and Carter, make sure you finish your quota before you leave today.
And with those kind words, the witch strode away, shouting that everyone better be working if they knew what was good for them. The sound of clacking keyboards instantly resumed. Avery exhaled slowly, the weight of the day pressing down on him. On the upside, 2 levels underground, the bunker would offer some peace. At least Shapiro couldn't monitor him there. A small reprieve. But the unpaid overtime? That would be the real grind. Avery's muscles ached from hauling boxes of survival gear for the past hour. His mind felt numb with the monotony of inventory lists. Plus, he still needed to finish the day's customer satisfaction reports before he could leave for the day and grab some dinner. Sighing, Avery picked up the scanner from the standing desk and scanned another inventory page. A pop-up filled the computer screen. Yes or no? Avery waited for the rest of the message, but nothing else appeared. He hit the escape button. Nothing happened. What the hell? He muttered to himself, assuming someone was playing a prank on him. The word yes continued pulsing on the screen, as did its counterpart. Hovering above both words, a near-translucent image of an infinity symbol shimmered. The rational part of Avery's brain admonished that he should reboot the computer or shut it down. But a deeper part of him, starved for change, for escape, for anything to break the suffocating monotony of his solitary existence. So he reached out and touched yes. and the world exploded. Chapter 2. Consciousness slammed into Avery, jolting him awake. Someone weeping, and the smell. Horrible. Like rotting flesh. He was on the floor, in some kind of classical Greek rotunda, 2 stories high, and old. Decayed. Avery staggered to his feet, his legs wobbling beneath him. Dust swirled in the stale air, bits of concrete and broken pipes scattered across the cracked floor. He rubbed his forehead, trying to clear his mind. Around him, confused faces were coming into focus. People, just as disoriented as he was. Sunlight streamed through the broken windows on the east side, which was impossible since it was still early night. 8, 9, 12 people were with him, looking just as dazed, except the guy wearing a short leather jacket, beat up enough to be trendy. Underneath, he was wearing the same smoky gray jumpsuit as everyone else. His steel blue eyes landed on Avery and dismissed him just as quickly. Avery poked at his arm. Whatever he was wearing wasn't fabric, looked and felt like metallic scales, but incredibly form-fitting, and made him look way more muscular than he really was. Avery looked down at his crotch and felt a stab of panic. The pouch covering his package bordered on the obscene, as did the rest of this getup. The 6-pack abs design was nice, though, not as rippling as the scary guy with the jacket, but good enough. Stupid. This was no time to be worried about appearances. Where the hell was he?
What is this place?
An old woman's voice cut through the silence, her tone tinged with fear.
Level 1.
Grunted Leather Jacket.
Now stop asking stupid questions and get ready.
Get ready for what?
Asked someone to Avery's left. Leather Jacket simply pointed at the east wall. Everyone turned as a section of the wall slid up and apart with a grinding moan. The shadows beyond it seemed to vibrate with life. A shriek shattered the silence. Avery's stomach dropped as a nightmare launched itself through the opening. Emerging from the darkness came rats. But these weren't like any rats he'd ever seen. As large as wolves, their bodies mimicked some grotesque mix of semi-organic flesh and skeletal metal frames. The rats' red eyes glowed with menace, and their scorpion-like tails flicked back and forth. The metal rats shrieked again. People bolted, scattering like mice before a flood. "Don't run!" Avery shouted, but his voice barely cut through the panic. A nearby young woman, stern and brutally attractive, shot him a look.
So we're supposed to stand here and die?
"No," he growled, watching Leather Jacket unload his pistol into the advancing creatures. The blasts sent the rats into a frenzy, but it wasn't stopping enough of them. "Form a staggered half-circle around the guy with the gun and fight."
You gotta be kidding.
A middle-aged woman nearby muttered, her dark eyes darting between the metal rats and Avery. A man in his 50s with a dad bod nodded grimly.
Man's right. Running from predators without a plan is plain stupid.
Several of the rats let out an ear-piercing screech that rattled Avery's skull. He barely heard the young guy with glasses behind him whimper.
"I don't want to die."
A scrawny man in his early 20s, cocky in a way that felt forced, sauntered forward.
"Relax, son. Ain't nobody gonna die. This is all one big hollow production."
He threw his hands up, strutting toward the oncoming rats.
"Hey, Mr. Director, I'm ready for my close-up."
A giant rat pounced, knocking him flat on his back. His screams turned into wet gurgles of pain as metal teeth crunched into bone and flesh, causing people to panic even more and run toward the rotunda's sole opening, which only drew the predators right to them. Leather Jacket kept firing, trying to hold the line.
Keep them off me!
He barked between shots. Avery turned to the guy next to him. He was holding something Avery could only describe as a glowing sword. "Go help the guy with the gun." The guy flashed him a manic smile that showed off a big gap between his 2 front teeth.
Aye, aye, Commander.
He rushed toward Leather Jacket's side. More screams. Avery spun back toward the woman who had scoffed at him earlier. Mentally, he had dubbed her Mean Girl. The whip that she was now holding glowed neon purple. "Protect her," he ordered, nodding toward the cowering old woman. Mean Girl's jaw tightened, anger flashing in her honey-brown eyes.
Waste of time. She'll die anyway.
Just do it, please." For a moment, Avery thought she'd ignore him, but instead she stormed over to the old woman, her energy whip crackling through the air. A metal rat leapt at the old woman. Mean Girl flicked her whip at it, encircling the beast's body, and yanked her whip. The rat collapsed to the floor, its body twitching in 3 distinct pieces. Mean Girl didn't stop there, turning her frustration on the attacking pack of rats, cutting through them with a vengeful fury. Avery refocused his attention on the rat's frontal assault. 3 people were dead, but they still had a semblance of a semicircle. Avery wasn't sure what made him decide on a half-circle as a defensive posture, but it seemed to be working. Sort of. Avery scanned the floor for a weapon. Anything. There. That pipe would have to do. With too much effort, he managed to yank the pipe free. Feeling its cold weight in his hand as he rejoined the semicircle of fighters and Leather Jacket, who kept his gun blasting at the advancing metal monsters. In the corner of his eye, Avery saw a rat mid-leap, its red eyes locked onto the black woman from earlier. His hand tightened on the pipe, but he was too far away. The woman screamed, throwing her hands up in desperation. A blinding flash of light burst from her palms, creating a shimmering barrier of searing white light. The rat slammed into it and bounced off with a squeak, its metal body sizzling. The guy with the energy sword darted back and forth, slicing heads and limbs from the rats with his glowing sword. Avery didn't know who the guy was, but he was thankful he was here. A teenager's scream dragged Avery back into the moment. The kid was cornered, 2 rats closing in. Mean Girl and the guy with the glowing sword made short work of them. Minutes later, they were looking at metal shards, blood and icky goo littering an already debris-strewn floor. Avery stood, panting and glancing at the others. They were just as stunned as he was. The wall behind them bisected with a rumble. Leather Jacket returned his pistol to his hip holster.
"We should get out of here,"
he growled.
What about them?
Asked the old woman still huddled on the floor. Everyone, for some reason, looked at Avery, making him feel extremely self-conscious. For so long he'd done his best to blend in and not call attention to himself. Yet everyone was waiting. For him. The decision was easy. Easy and cruel. There might be more rats, or worse. He turned and helped the old woman to her feet, guessing she might be in her early 70s. "What's your name?"
Martha. Martha Clarkson.
"Let's go, Miss Clarkson." Avery took her by the hand and headed toward the new opening. Somehow, he knew everyone would follow. Chapter 3. Ghost Town, City of the Dead. Lots of ways to describe it. They were alone. No birds chirping, no cars, no people. Buildings. Yes, industrial and imposing. Nothing else, though. The silence, morbid.
Where is everybody?
Asked the guy with the dad bod, who backed Avery's defensive formation plan.
Or is that another stupid question?
Leather Jacket ignored him, too busy scanning the horizon. Mean Girl stepped up to him, confidence in her honey-brown eyes.
You seem to have some idea of what's going on. Care to share?
Leather Jacket, as Avery had started calling him, grunted and shook his head.
"I know enough not to stand out here in the open."
Avery's gaze settled on a familiar 4-story industrial building nearby. "I work over there," he said, pointing.
"You work for Stars and Stripes?"
Avery couldn't tell if the skinny teen with glasses was impressed or amused. "I should be able to get us in,"
"As exciting as that sounds,"
sneered Sword Guy.
"why would we want to go there?"
Food. Water. Avery eyed Leather Jacket. Weapons. Leather Jacket scanned Avery from top to bottom. Avery knew that look well. It was a look that said you weren't worth much, but still better than nothing.
"All right,"
he said.
"Lead on."
It took longer than it should have to reach the building. Martha's steps weren't exactly slow, but Avery couldn't help but notice the labored wheezing of her breath. Leaving her behind wasn't an option. He'd want someone to look out for his mother if the situation were reversed. He scanned the group. 8 people left. 4 dead. Avery sighed, knowing it could have been worse. But still. When they finally reached the reinforced steel doors of Stars and Stripes, Avery let out a breath of relief. The thick doors should keep the metal rats out, but only if they could get inside. The others looked at him, waiting. Avery stepped up to the glass bubble scanner on the left side of the double doors, positioning his face in front of it. Nothing. He tried again, doing his best to line his face up just right. Someone laughed.
Nice dance moves.
Avery knew it had to be the guy with the sword.
Something's wrong.
The teen turned toward the others.
Don't you feel it?
Avery certainly didn't. Then a sound, heavy thuds against the pavement, snagged his attention. He jerked away from the door, heart racing, as another half-finished nightmare skittered around the corner. Gray metal spiders, the size of a horse, skittered towards them with inhuman speed. Their bodies, a grotesque fusion of gleaming metal and gooey pink, organic matter, with a creepy eye above its metallic mandibles.
Holy crap.
Mean Girl took an unconscious step back. Avery's mind raced. Distract them while I get this open.
How?
She asked, her voice cracking. Sword Guy stepped forward, his energy sword sizzling to life.
Use that kinky whip of yours, honey.
Without waiting for a response, he charged at the approaching monstrosities. His sword sliced through the air, connecting with the nearest spider's leg and slicing through it. Leather Jacket Guy took up position next to Avery and started blasting the spiders with his gun.
Get that door open,
he hissed. Avery nodded and turned back to the scanner. His hands shook as he tried again, the sounds of battle intensifying behind him. He risked a glance over his shoulder. Mean Girl had joined Sword Guy, her energy whip snapping at the hulking spiders. She sliced through the nearest spider, splitting its abdomen open with a brutal strike, sending chunks of metal and guts splattering across the pavement. Sword Guy was just as relentless, his glowing sword a blur as he hacked through another spider's legs. It collapsed, shrieking as it writhed on the ground, green liquid spilling from its mouth in thick, burning streams. Leather Jacket's shots rang out beside him, precise and controlled, keeping the remaining spiders at bay.
You
Leather Jacket grunted at the black woman.
make sure these things don't touch him.
Name's Tara. I'll do my best.
She pulled the terrified teenager close.
Stay close to me, baby.
I'm not a baby.
The kid protested weakly, but he pressed closer to Tara as a glob of green liquid sailed past, missing them by inches. The wall sizzled where the spider's spit had landed. Acid. Great.
Any time now.
Leather Jacket hissed, his gun barking steadily as he picked off spiders trying to flank them.
Let me try.
The guy with the dad bod stepped forward, holding a thin metal device, something that resembled a pocket phone but was obviously far more advanced. He tapped the screen a few times before aiming it at the scanner. A soft beep sounded.
Try it now,
the man said, stepping back. Two metal spiders skittered past Mean Girl and Sword Guy. Leather Jacket was only able to take down one. Barely. The remaining spider lunged at Avery and the guy with the phone, its mandibles snapping. Tara stepped forward and threw up her hands. A barrier of swirling white light sprang into existence. The creature slammed into it, reeling backward. Sword Guy plunged his glowing sword through its one eye. Avery positioned himself back in front of the scanner. This time the doors slid open.
Great job, man.
Leather Jacket slapped him on the back.
Call me Vic. Vic Thompson.
Everyone inside.
Leather Jacket ordered, laying down covering fire as the group scrambled for safety. Mean Girl and Sword Guy had killed several spiders, but there were more coming around both corners of the building.
Close the doors!
Sword Guy shouted. The teen rushed to a metal panel by the doors and slapped it. The doors started to slide close. Where's Martha? Avery looked around, frantic.
Wait!
Martha tried to run inside just as a spider spat a web, ensnaring her ankle, dragging her down. We gotta save her. Leather Jacket and Sword Guy grabbed Avery by the arms and pulled him back as the doors slammed shut. Avery could hear Martha's screams. He would probably hear her screams forever. Chapter 4. The quiet inside the building felt surreal compared to the chaos outside. Human-eating spiders, metal rats. None of this made any sense. One moment, he was taking inventory in the Stars and Stripes bunker. The next, he was swimming in death and destruction. Martha, those people back in the rotunda. He should have done more.
You okay, Avery?
Yes, thanks. The corner of Vic's mouth twisted into a half smirk. He wasn't fooling the engineer or anyone else. Avery pushed that thought and the sound of their echoing footsteps out of his mind as he led the way to the elevator bank. Leather Jacket and Mean Girl took up the rear. Yes, he now knew them to be Morgan and Vanessa, but a dark part of him would always think of them as Leather Jacket and Mean Girl. The guy with the glowing sword was Jake Lawson. He, Tara, and Omar were looking around like tourists. Geez, what a group they made. The lobby's emergency lights cast long, red, morbid shadows across the polished floor, barely illuminating 7 feet ahead. 6 days a week at Stars and Stripes headquarters. Avery could pretty much navigate the place, blindfolded. Love your phone, Avery told Vic to distract himself.
So do I.
The engineer's face lit up with a grin that seemed out of place, given their circumstances.
Not sure it's a phone, though. More like a supercomputer.
Where'd you get it?
Woke up with it attached to my belt.
Avery did his best to keep his expression neutral. More questions, no answers. Story of this totally screwed up day.
Where are we going?
Tara asked. The bunker. Avery kept his eyes forward.
An actual bunker?
Jake let out a chuckle.
A dungeon's more my style.
Funny.
Vanessa shot back.
Here I had you pegged for the state prison type.
An argument was the last thing they needed, so Avery interrupted. Stars and Stripes owners are a bit paranoid. The high school kid, Omar, he remembered, dashed ahead, frantically jabbing at the elevator button.
I don't think they're working.
Vic confirmed the obvious with a shake of his head. Vanessa turned on Avery.
Well, Mr. Leader Man.
Avery exhaled slowly. I'm not a leader, but I do know there's a stairwell nearby that'll take us down to the bunker. Avery didn't need Vic's help getting access to the bunker. His handprint was good enough. The space was huge, but not massive, filled with metal gray lockers and large crates. It was also much cooler than outside. Avery gestured toward a wall of lockers. Everyone grab at least one satchel. There's enough food and water in each to last 2 days. Vanessa yanked a satchel from a locker and pulled out what looked like a protein bar and wrinkled her nose.
You call this food?
Jake slung a tan satchel over his shoulder.
Beats eating rats.
The insurance adjuster dished up another tooth-gap smile, then flung open another locker and grabbed a second survival satchel. His sword wasn't glowing right now. In fact, the sword part was gone. Its hilt rested against Jake's right hip as if magnetized. Morgan, still scanning the room, asked,
Where are the weapons?
Avery pointed to the large crates stacked near the back of the bunker. But they're locked, and the crates are steel. Morgan knelt down to examine one of the stacked crates.
Got a key?
Avery shook his head, earning him a look from Morgan that would make Ms. Shapiro proud. Oddly enough, he didn't feel scared, which was strange in itself because Morgan certainly was one scary dude, but not as scary as the metal rats. Grinning, Vic stepped forward.
Need a hand?
He pressed a button on his high-tech phone, and a neon blue screen popped up over it. He tapped at the screen for a few seconds. A click, then a beep. The crate lids popped open. Morgan didn't need more of an invitation. He tore the lid off, revealing the stash of weapons inside, mostly carbine rifles.
Now we're in business.
Avery blinked, stunned that Vic could break through Stars and Stripes' encryption so easily. How did you... Vic shrugged.
It just felt right.
More of the group gathered around, eyes widening as they pulled out guns, blades, and carbines from the crates. Omar grabbed a sleek-looking rifle, his hands shaking with excitement. Morgan shot him a look.
Watch where you point that thing, kid.
So, what do we do now?
Asked Tara.
I need to pick up my kids.
Silence. To Avery's relief, everyone was staring at Morgan instead of him, which gave him the courage to speak up. Time to come clean. What's going on?
And what were those rats?
Asked Vanessa as she yanked a plasma pistol from the crate. Omar shifted awkwardly, holding his newly acquired rifle.
Yeah, I was so freaked out. Thought I was gonna piss myself.
Vic chuckled, patting him on the shoulder.
Don't worry, son. The suits we're wearing take care of that.
Vanessa snorted.
Really? And where does the piss go?
Cooling system is my first guess.
Vic was actually grinning. Omar's face twisted in disgust.
That's awful.
Practical, though.
Jake added with a shrug. Tara settled the argument.
Can we get back to what matters? Like how we get back home?
Morgan looked around at the group before finally speaking.
We're inside an experimental, immersive hologame. A real one.
Silence. Then murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room.
Check your wristbands.
Avery looked around to see if everyone else was following Morgan's instruction before glancing down at the wristband he'd barely noticed before. Tara held up her arm, showing her wristband.
What does 100 mean?
Morgan folded his arms.
It means you didn't die in level 1.
Omar checked his wrist.
I got 200 points, but I only killed one rat. I think.
Vanessa and Jake had the highest score, 7 kills each, 700 points. Omar turned to Avery.
How many points do you have?
Avery hesitated, then exhaled. 900.
That's not fair.
Vanessa dished up a pout.
You didn't kill as many rats as I did, let alone spiders.
Her attitude made it easy to forget how the black jumpsuit clung to her curves. Almost.
Yeah,
Morgan said.
but he got us to the treasure. What treasure?
Jake complained. Morgan shook his head.
You know. Food. Water. Weapons.
Vanessa muttered under her breath.
Stupid game.
What's the name of this game?
Asked Vic.
And what's our objective?
It's called The Hunt.
Morgan didn't smile, so Avery had to assume that he was being serious.
The mission changes for each level. Sometimes it's just to survive while earning as many points as you can.
Jake whistled.
So what happens if we, get whacked?
Morgan's face darkened.
You die.
Chapter 5. The bunker shimmered, then blurred. Tan cement walls melted into dull gray bulkheads. Avery blinked, still breathing heavily from the shift. 1 second they were in the bunker, and now they stood inside a ship. A military naval ship from the looks of things, but Avery wasn't certain. He had never been on a ship of any kind before. Avery's gut twisted as he took in the scene. Lots of consoles, no windows, glowing orange screens, and a large metal table that could have passed for a pool table, except for the strange equipment attached around its sides. Around him, unfamiliar faces etched with confusion and fear stared back at him.
Where the hell am I?
The man was about Vic's age, only rounder and with less hair on his head. The people next to him looked just as confused. Morgan stepped forward, his blue eyes hard.
We're on a spaceship. Looks like we've leveled up.
Can you confirm that, Vic? Avery asked. The being on a spaceship part. The faint hum of engines throbbing beneath his feet could just as easily be from a naval vessel. Morgan had said that he had played this game before, but could he trust him? Everyone watched while Vic called up a holoscreen from his high-tech phone. The engineer named it a cipher node. He could even wrap it around his wrist.
Confirmed. Though I have no idea what solar system we're in.
What?
Grunted the Latino next to the blonde. He was tall and blocky, and wearing the same smoky gray jumpsuit as everyone else. The blonde with the caring brown eyes reminded Avery of Marigold. Slightly. Vanessa leaned her head toward Avery and batted her eyes.
Care to explain?
Avery glanced over at Morgan, who appeared to be sizing up the newcomers. We're inside some kind of adaptive, immersive game. We earn points by destroying things that attack us, but... Avery paused, glancing at Vic, who nodded encouragingly. We don't know if any of this is real. I suggest that you treat it like it is,
A game?
hissed a woman who reminded Avery of Shapiro.
Do you really expect us to believe such nonsense?
Yep. She definitely fit the mold of his supervisor, frosty vibes and all. Before Avery could respond, a hologram flickered to life above the center table. The low-resolution image resolved into an alien dressed in military uniform. He was startlingly human-like, save for a faint blue tinge to his skin and prominent forehead. His voice crackled with static and urgent clicks, totally incomprehensible.
Translate, please.
Avery had no idea who or what Vic was talking to, but it worked.
Captain's log.
The hologram began. The alien's human eyes darted around nervously.
The crew. They're falling ill, disappearing, or dying. It started with the special cargo. Command promises rescue, but I fear they won't make it in time.
The image dissolved into fading after images of white light.
Now that was
Jake raised a dramatic finger and paused.
weird.
That earned him several glares, especially from Ms. Frostbite. Avery closed his eyes for a few seconds to clear his mind, thinking disparaging thoughts about these people would do none of them any good. Tara cleared her throat.
Maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Great idea. I'm Jake Lawson, insurance adjuster.
Jake leaned over the table and aimed a wolfish grin at the blonde.
And you, honey, are plain juicy.
The blonde gave him a look that could freeze helium. The young guy standing next to her looked like he wanted to punch Jake. Avery didn't get the sense that the pair were a couple, but he could be wrong. But he knew he wasn't. Just like he knew the pool table was really a tactical device, which he shouldn't. Vanessa pressed up against Jake's shoulder and dished up a sultry fake pout.
And here I thought you were going to propose.
Hey, there's plenty of meat to go around.
Good.
Vanessa stepped away from Jake as he reached for her.
Perhaps we can find you an alien to keep you company.
Avery interrupted before the insurance adjuster could say something gross. Omar, would you like to start with the introductions?
Is this the part where we start sharing vegan chocolate cookie recipes?
Jake was the only one to giggle at Vanessa's unnecessary remark. Omar looked awkward and lovable at the same time. He looked over at Tara. Even though she was several inches shorter than the teen, he obviously saw her as a maternal figure. Tara smiled at him encouragingly.
I'm Omar Al-Farid, sophomore at Fairview High. Gamer.
Avery smiled at Omar. He could relate. He didn't like public speaking either. Taking a deep breath, Avery stepped forward anyway. I'm Avery, he said, keeping it short. He motioned toward the others. This is Vic. He's sharp with tech. If anything needs fixing or figuring out, he's your guy. Vic gave a quick nod, waving his cipher node. Jake, Avery continued, wields some kind of energy sword, though you'll probably hear more jokes than anything useful. Jake flashed a toothed gap grin, his body language casual, as if they weren't trapped on a spaceship in a life-or-death game. Avery's eyes landed on Tara. Tara's got the ability to generate force shields. She's been holding us together since things went sideways. Tara gave a small, tight smile.
Just trying to stay alive.
Tell that to the people who got munched on by rats.
Vanessa flashed Tara an evil grin. Tara looked like she wanted to respond, but held her tongue. A brief silence followed before the blonde stepped forward cautiously.
I'm Samantha, not Sam.
She said, scanning the room.
I don't really know what's going on. I clicked an ad on my phone, something about, did I want to know the meaning of life? And now I'm here. That's all I've got.
Avery nodded. Nice to meet you, Samantha. A broad-shouldered man with the build of an athlete rubbed his temple, then spoke.
Travis Bradley, same thing. Some weird ad popped up on my phone. I pressed yes before I even thought about it, and here I am.
The bulky Latino spoke up next.
Ethan Lopez,
he said, glancing at his hands as if expecting something to happen.
I don't know why I'm here. I was just checking out some game when I got pulled into this, whatever this is.
The other two new players said nothing. Their expressions screamed disbelief, as if none of this was worth engaging with. Avery didn't push them. They'd learned soon enough, just like the rest of them had.
If I ever get out of this game, I swear I'll do all my homework,
Omar whispered. Tara slid an arm on his shoulder in a sign of support. Vanessa turned on Morgan.
So how do we find out about this stupid mission?
Morgan folded his arms and glared back at her before answering.
Seems pretty obvious. We get rid of whatever's in the cargo. Save the ship.
Jake grinned, the gap between his front teeth visible.
Sounds easy enough.
This isn't a game, Jake,
Vic warned.
But it is.
Jake shot back, still grinning.
Literally.
A new hologram materialized, a 2D neon orange schematic of the ship. Ethan pointed to a section labeled Cargo Bay. Morgan frowned.
It won't be that simple. There'll be traps, opponents.
The middle-aged guy who didn't give his name guffawed.
Traps? You're all crazy.
He rushed over to the bridge's huge metal doors. Frostbite looked like she was ready to join him.
How are we supposed to make it to the cargo bay in one piece?
Travis looked around the table and added,
Let alone get rid of whatever's inside.
Vic answered first.
Our suits. Give us special abilities. Plus our weapons.
Vic pointed at Vanessa.
She has a plasma whip. The suit also gives her the agility and strength to use it.
I have a backpack and some funny-looking pouches. Don't look like weapons to me,
Ethan said. He pointed to Avery.
What's your superpower?
Avery felt himself flushing. He didn't have one.
Oh, he can give orders.
The words dripped like artificial syrup from Vanessa's mouth. Samantha's finger traced a path on the hologram to another area.
The armory,
She said.
It's not too far from here, and it's on the way to the cargo bay.
How do you know it's the armory?
Asked Frostbite. Samantha pointed to a rifle-shaped icon on the hologram.
Smart and good-looking.
Jake's gray eyes turned hungry.
Think I'm in love.
Think I'm still not interested.
Blazing white numbers appeared above their heads. 40 minutes, slowly ticking down. Avery's jaw tightened. Not much time. We hit the armory first, then the cargo bay. He paused, realizing he'd taken charge again. Any objections? Vanessa brushed past him, her voice cold.
I'll get back to you on that.
Chapter 6. Vorak's fur bristled with excitement as he surveyed the command center. 3 silver bots manned the stations while he and his 4 clients enjoyed the show. Massive screens, state-of-the-art, lined the walls, displaying the human prey huddled on a simulated spaceship bridge. A slender, overly expensive bot glided silently between them, offering glasses of fermented juice on gleaming trays. Their hard angles and domed faces belied their lethal capabilities. One paused beside Vorak and refilled his proffered glass.
First blood,
Vorak purred, his right claw tapping against a blinking console.
and so much more carnage to come.
Thorin Raxor snorted.
Barely worth the millions we paid Vorak. I've hunted more challenging quarries in my own gardens.
Vorak's eyes narrowed, a hint of danger in the screen's glow.
Would the esteemed chief of agriculture prefer not to be invited to future hunts? I'm certain that can be arranged.
Thorin's fur flattened against his body, a submissive gesture.
No, I merely jest. This hunt is exhilarating.
Sivra Burgle joined Vorak and Thorin.
More would have perished in the first round if not for that strange human giving orders. The one calling itself Avery.
Like most thrall females, Sivra wasn't as tall or as muscular as males. However, she towered over most of their human prey, was an extremely good warrior, and more importantly, obscenely rich. The lovely auburn mane covering her collarbone made Sivra easy to look at, too. Ranar Skalthor and Zayleth Dravos joined their little group. He had everyone's attention now. Vorak bowed slightly, his razor-sharp teeth gleaming.
I hoped it would prove more challenging for such great warriors as yourselves if the prey didn't merely rely on BioWare suits.
Zayleth, a formidable warrior with cold, dead eyes, in Vorak's opinion, growled low in his throat. He had lost a sizable side bet on Avery's early demise.
A disappointing twist, Vorak. I expected better sport.
Patience, my friend.
Vorak wished he could gut the thrall.
The real hunt has yet to begin.
Ragnar Skalthor, silent until now, spoke in a gravelly whisper.
We risk much with this venture, Vorak. The expense alone is staggering, and should we be discovered...
He didn't need to finish his complaint. Everyone here knew. The thrall's relationship with the Coalition was a tenuous one. Earth hunting was strictly off-limits, hence the outrageous fees Vorak could charge for the hunt. Should they be caught, the other races would demand their deaths. Vorak brushed Ragnar's concern away with the wave of his hand.
The rewards far outweigh the risks, my friends. And isn't the threat of death what makes the hunt so thrilling?
The other thrall murmured in agreement, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Vorak loved the hunt too, but he loved money more. He turned back to the screens, watching as the human known as Avery led his group towards the armory. A wicked grin spread across Vorak's face.
Thorin, Ragnar, you're up next.
Thorin cackled loud enough to wake the dead. He turned to Sivra and Zayleth, mock pity in his hard eyes.
Perhaps I'll leave you one or two for you to play with. Don't count on it, though.
He tossed his glass over his shoulder, shattering it on the metal floor, then swaggered out of the command center. They all looked after him, scowling. Ragnar handed his glass to Vorak.
You've got to admire the thrall's confidence.
Overconfidence, but Vorak kept that thought to himself.
Happy hunting.
Ragnar inclined his head slightly to Vorak, then Sivra and Zayleth.
Enjoy the show.
They watched Ragnar leave before returning their attention back to the monitor screens.
Any takers that Thorin will get himself killed?
Asked Sivra.
I'll take that bet.
Zayleth took a sip of his drink.
1 million, he'll survive. Make it 2. Deal.
Vorak half wished he could get a piece of the action, but as the hunt's organizer, he couldn't afford to appear that he was orchestrating the death of any hunter. Besides, should Thorin survive, he could bilk him for more money with another hunt, as long as none of the prey survived. Avery's eyes strained against the gloom as he and Morgan led the way down a spaceship corridor. Intermittent strobes of white light cast sinister shadows across the faces of his ragtag group. The sharp smell of scorched wiring mixed with the cold. Broken cables dangled from the ceiling like lifeless tentacles. Whatever happened to the ship and crew, it hadn't been pleasant, and it had been recent. Morgan paused and glanced over his shoulder.
Keep your barrel down until you're ready to shoot someone.
He hissed at Omar. Omar nodded sheepishly and adjusted his carbine rifle. Hopefully the armory had weapons that didn't hold the risk of blowing a hole through bulkheads, like carbines. The group shuffled forward, a tense formation of survivors and newcomers, weapons at the ready, except for Omar. Tara was keeping pace with the teen, so Avery wasn't worried too much about him. Avery kept his voice low. We're close. Omar, if anything attacks, pull your hood up. It'll camouflage you. Omar frowned.
You sure? How do you know?
Just trust me, Avery replied, a nagging uncertainty gnawing at him. How did he know these things? Morgan's fist shot up, halting the group. A robot, sleek, white, and menacing, lurked around the corner. Its metallic body gleamed dully in the corridor's low light. Avery felt his pulse quicken. The robot was gripping a nasty-looking sword in its left hand.
What's your stupid fist supposed to mean?
Avery whirled around, pressing a finger to his lips. He didn't know the man's name since he declined to offer it when they did the introductions. Neither did Frostbite. He did know that attracting the robot's attention would not be a good idea.
Don't tell me.
The man's retort was cut short as a second robot crashed through the ceiling, raining debris on them as it landed on Travis with a violent thud. Frostbite screamed, slapping her back against the bulkhead. More than enough noise to attract attention. The original robot was already barreling down the corridor toward them, its massive green sword flashing behind it. "Tara," shouted Avery. "Shield us from the front, but leave enough room for Morgan and me to take shots at the robot. Omar, protect our rear, but don't shoot our people and pull your hood up."
You got it, Avery.
Omar vanished. Mostly. His carbine was clearly visible, and thankfully, aimed at the robot attacking them from behind. Tara's hands shot forward, a shimmering white barrier materializing before them. The robot smacked into it and stumbled back. Gunfire erupted from Morgan's weapon, the rounds plugging the robot with smoking holes, slowing its advance but failing to stop it. Avery's carbine was less effective, making him wonder exactly what kind of gun did Morgan have. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off its armored hide. Avery risked a look behind him and half wished that he didn't. Vanessa's plasma whip lashed at the second robot repeatedly, but it was fast, too fast, and managed to dodge each and every time while still managing to snatch up Travis from the floor and slam him into Vic. Both men crashed into a heap. Jake lunged forward with a moronic cry, his energy sword sizzling as it met the robot's own sword. Samantha and Ethan used their carbines to spray it with bullets. The robot swiped at them with its free arm. Samantha let out a yelp and disappeared. Ethan wasn't so lucky and went flying into the bulkhead. Ahead, the first robot banged ineffectively at Tara's force shield, trying its best to enter the fray.
"I don't know how long I can hold this."
Avery gave Tara his full attention. "If you don't, we'll all die." She nodded, her dark eyes resolute. Beside Avery, Morgan's gun spat fire at the robot pummeling at Tara's force shield. No surprise that Mr. No-Name panicked. He shoved Vanessa out of his way and tried to run back to the bridge. A stream of red light came from the same direction and exploded the man's head like a pumpkin. Avery's mind raced, realizing a third enemy lurked unseen. "Travis, get up and cover our backs," Avery commanded, turning to the fallen ex-football player.
"No way!"
Travis groaned from the floor, his body still reeling from the robot's blows. Avery's next words carried an edge of steel. "Do it. Now, and shield your face." Thank the heavens, Travis scrambled to his feet, using his wide, athletic body as a human shield. His invincible suit gleamed dully, deflecting a barrage of laser attacks from behind. A dark shadow plowed into Travis, sending them both tumbling. Avery froze when a strobe light hit the once dark figure. Towering and broad-shouldered, with two glowing orange dots for pupils, the creature made it to its feet first and hammered Travis with a blow to the chest. It turned its focus on Avery. Its muscular form was encased in a charcoal-gray jumpsuit similar to Avery's, only more padded and more high-tech. Its face was wide and leathery. So totally alien. It raised a strange-looking weapon at Avery and pulled the trigger. Avery tried to dodge, but it was way too late. A red beam of light sizzled past his left shoulder. The second robot had accidentally sliced the creature instead of connecting with its target. Jake. The robot still managed to land a hard kick to Vanessa's right shin. Avery could hear the sickening crunch from even where he stood. Jake took advantage of the robot's split attention and jammed his energy sword into the robot's back. Jake deactivated his sword as the robot spasmed like a puppet before collapsing to the floor. Tara cried out, dividing Avery's attention. Shield gone, the original robot snatched her from her feet. Morgan pelted it with gunfire, which again did little more than slow it down. Vic and Ethan joined in, blasting the robot with carbine rifle fire. Avery knew that they were dead if they didn't turn things around fast, or if there was nothing but deep space behind this bulkhead, since some carbine bullets were sure to get through. The alien creature, and Avery had no doubt that it was alien, had taken an interest in Travis, blasting him point blank with its laser, all while managing to take a swing at Samantha with the downed robot's sword. The blonde screamed and disappeared before the sword removed her head, instead embedding into the bulkhead. Frostbite huddled on the floor, trying to make herself small. Jake rushed the creature before it could pull the sword out of the bulkhead. It swiveled its body just enough to let Jake brush past it and aimed its weapon at Jake's back. Avery shot it in the face, or at least tried to. Its forearm deflected the bullets, but not without a cost. Black liquid trickled down the alien's forearm. It pounced. Avery gasped as the alien's claws found purchase in his midsection, tearing through his jumpsuit. Pain blazed across his body as blood welled up from the wound. Avery staggered back, narrowly avoiding a follow-up swipe that would have taken half his face off. Samantha blasted it from behind. It spun around and blasted Samantha. Thankfully, she had disappeared again. Hopefully, she wouldn't rematerialize inside a bulkhead or something. Damn. The alien was aiming his weapon at him again. Avery knew it was over as he saw it pull the trigger. Blood splattered across the gray bulkhead. Avery looked down at his feet. The alien's eyes, wide and lifeless, stared into nothingness. Jake flashed Avery a wide, tooth-gapped smile.
Thought you could use a hand, bud.
Thanks. Avery looked around. Both robots lay on the floor, crumpled, and the alien that almost gutted him. Not moving. Good. And no one dead except for Mr. No-Name. Avery knew that he should feel bad about that, but he didn't. The man was a liability, a potentially dangerous one at that. Strange. Not long ago there were days he wanted to die after losing Marigold. Now he was doing his best to stay alive, and keep as many of the people here alive as possible, even Frostbite. He really should try finding out her name again. Tara was looking around, worry lining in her dark face.
Omar?
Right here.
Omar appeared out of nowhere, smiling, until he fully took in the carnage.
Let's go, people.
Disgust filled Morgan's eyes as he looked down at Frostbite cowering on the floor.
We need to get to the armory. We have less than 20 minutes to complete the mission.
Avery, aching all over and so out of breath, gestured for Morgan to lead the way. If he wanted to play leader, it was fine by him. Chapter 7. The rest of their trek to the ship's armory was alien, robot-free. Avery was the last to step inside, his gaze sweeping over the compact space. The armory, dimly lit and lined with panels of softly glowing orange neon, gave off a stark, industrial feel. Weapons and gear were methodically displayed behind transparent cabinets. At the armory center, a robust workbench equipped with digital schematics and tools suggested readiness, despite the haggard state of the rest of the ship. Avery surveyed his fellow survivors, noting their various injuries. Ethan, help out Vanessa first. Her leg looks bad.
What the hell am I supposed to do? I'm not a doctor.
Just help her. Ethan hesitated, then moved to Vanessa's side. As his hands hovered over her right leg, a soft blue glow emanated from his palms. Everyone watched in amazement as the pain drained from Vanessa's eyes.
How do you feel?
Ethan asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. Vanessa flexed her leg, a look of disbelief on her face.
Great,
she said, then added with a smirk,
You can stop feeling me up now.
Ethan blushed, then turned to Avery, his eyes wide.
How did you know I could do this? I didn't even know.
Avery shook his head, equally perplexed. I'm not sure. It just came to me. Omar piped up.
Maybe that's your superpower, Avery. You know what we can and can't do.
Jake slapped Omar's shoulder.
All Mr. Bag of Bones can do is give orders.
Oh, shut up, Jake, snapped Avery. To everyone's shock, Jake's mouth clamped shut. He clawed at his mouth, panic rising in his eyes as he found himself unable to speak. In a flash, he drew his energy sword, the blue energy sizzling as he advanced on Avery. Wait a minute, Jake, Avery said, backing away. Jake froze mid-step, his sword still raised. Samantha voiced what everyone was thinking.
How did you do that?
Vic snapped his fingers, his smile wide.
Apparently, Avery's superpower, as it were, is getting people to do what he says. Which makes sense. No way a bunch of strangers could fight in such a coordinated way without some influence.
Avery shifted uneasily, the weight of their intent stares pressing down on him as the silence stretched taut around them. There had to be another explanation. Morgan cleared his throat.
You may want to release him now, Avery.
Avery blushed. Yeah, right. He turned back to Jake, who was staring him down. You can relax. But no attacking me, he added quickly. Jake's body relaxed, and his energy sword disappeared, leaving only the hilt of his sword. The anger in his eyes didn't go away, though.
This ain't over, pretty boy.
Pretty boy. He had never been called a pretty boy before, but there were more pressing matters that needed his attention.
Maybe,
suggested Travis,
we should get what we came here for.
Good point.
Morgan checked his wristband.
We've got about 15 minutes left to finish the mission. We better gear up. Lose the carbines.
Omar's grip on his rifle tightened.
Why? These shoot good.
Keep shooting these carbines, and we will eventually blow a hole through the bulkheads.
The group followed Morgan to the cabinets lining the walls, even frostbite. Omar tugged at the handles, finding them securely locked.
Vic, can you work your magic?
I live to serve,
Vic said, pulling out his cipher node. His fingers flew across the holographic interface, lines of code reflecting in his eyes. With a series of soft clicks, the cabinet locks disengaged. As the cabinet swung open, the group was met with an arsenal of weaponry. Sleek rifles with pulsing energy cores, compact devices that hummed with potential, and an array of gadgets that defied easy categorization. Naturally, Morgan moved with purpose, selecting a pair of matte black pistols that fit his hands like they were made for him. He then reached for two small spheres, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns. Avery watched him, a knot forming in his stomach. Morgan, do you know how to use those? He asked, nodding at the spheres. Morgan's lips quirked into a half smile.
I'm sure I can improvise,
he said, tucking them into his leather jacket pockets. The others armed themselves as best they could, the weight of the strange weapons a reminder of their dire circumstances. As they finished, Tara spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper.
What about that thing we saw earlier?
Samantha shuddered.
It was hideous. Scarier than even those robot things.
Vic's eyes narrowed, darting between his reluctant teammates.
Part of the game. Right, Morgan?
Morgan waited several uncomfortable beats before he answered.
You could say that.
Vanessa swaggered over to the pair, looking severely beautiful as ever.
Gotta love a man of mystery.
She slapped a magazine into her new laser rifle.
But I prefer my men breathing.
Avery and his fellow survivors edged forward, their footsteps muted thumps against the cold metal deck. Strobe lights broke up the darkness here and there. The ship felt lifeless, dead. Vanessa took point, laser rifle expertly near her left cheek. Jake flanked her, his energy sword emitting a low, unsettling hum, while Travis, clad in his so-called invincible suit, remained close to Vanessa, on her right side. Avery couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, unseen eyes observing them make their way to the cargo bay. He probably was just being paranoid. Maybe not. At the corridor's T-section, Vanessa raised a clenched fist. The group froze and held their collective breath. After an eternity of seconds, she whispered,
Clear.
As they neared the cargo bay, Vic's cipher node emitted a soft chirp. He frowned at the holographic display.
Getting some weird readings. Think it's sort of a power source.
What kind?
Ethan asked, voice tight with tension.
Similar to Tara's white hole energy, but different,
Vic muttered.
Can't pinpoint it, though.
What's a white hole?
Omar half whispered.
The opposite of a black hole,
Vic said, clearly in his element.
But instead of pulling everything into its gravitational well like a black hole, a white hole keeps everything out. Theoretically, anyway.
Vic opened his mouth to continue, but Morgan cut him off.
Quiet. We don't need to attract any more attention if we can help it.
Avery agreed, but he was more than happy to let Morgan play bad guy. The others were already uncomfortable with him. He would be too if he ran into someone who could make him do anything they wanted him to. As they approached the cargo bay, the door slid open silently, revealing a compact, box-shaped space. Sparse and unadorned, it was completely empty except for a giant sphere resting at its center. Warm blue light seemed to radiate from the sphere itself. Its surface shimmered, alive with ever-changing patterns that cascaded across its circumference, casting an alien glow that filled the otherwise barren space. Avery couldn't explain it, but he felt an inexorable pull towards the object. His feet moved of their own accord, the world narrowing onto the sphere. Even Frostbite, usually aloof, drew closer. It wasn't until Morgan's iron grip yanked him back that Avery realized how close he'd come to touching it.
So how do we get rid of it?
Travis asked, joining Morgan and Avery at the sphere. Samantha hurried to a nearby bulkhead, her fingers pecked at the alien interface panel next to the left door.
Maybe this can open the bay doors.
With us inside?
Vanessa's voice dripped with sarcasm. Jake chuckled, earning him a withering glare from Samantha.
Vic?
Samantha called, ignoring the jab. Vic nodded, already tapping at his cipher node.
Shouldn't be a problem to open the blast doors after we clear out.
Morgan's expression darkened as he focused on the sphere. He motioned for Travis to approach it. Travis made a face, distorting his usually handsome features. It was obvious that he didn't want to touch the sphere. It was also obvious that he would have to deal with Morgan if he didn't. Travis sighed as he reached out. His pale hands probed the sphere's smooth surface, searching for any kind of mechanism to open it. The lid burst open. Frostbite screamed as a monster leapt out of the sphere in a blur. Avery barely registered the flash of razor-sharp claws tearing across Travis's chest before a laser blast hit seconds later. Screaming, Travis stumbled back. Had the beam struck him several inches higher, his face would have been melted sludge. This was no monster. It was another alien. It slammed an armored foot into Morgan's chest, sending the man flying. The alien's claws whistled past Avery's face. Avery tucked his chin, saving his features, but exposing his shoulder. White-hot pain exploded through his body as flesh tore. The pain was shockingly, terrifyingly real for what was supposed to be a game. In a heartbeat, the alien whirled, its serrated sword plunging into Frostbite's chest. It yanked its sword free the second Ethan started shooting at it. The alien somersaulted and dodged as it made its way back toward Avery. How can you somersault holding a sword? The ceiling groaned, then collapsed in a shower of sparks and metal. A silver-white robot crashed to the floor, its green energy sword already slicing through the air. Tara's shield flared to life, barely deflecting the blow meant for her and Omar. Laser fire crisscrossed the cargo bay, leaving scorch marks and molten slag in its wake. Vanessa's whip sang as it ensnared the robot's arm, giving Jake the opening he needed to sever its other limb, neither of which slowed the robot one bit. Avery couldn't focus on their battle. The alien was on him again, its strikes so fast they seemed to bend time itself. Somehow, probably because of his jumpsuit, he managed to dodge and weave away from the alien's claws and strikes. Lungs burning from the strain, Avery couldn't get it together enough to formulate a plan or shout orders. From the corner of his eye, he saw Morgan's shots going wide, uncharacteristically sloppy for the marksman. A vicious backhand busted Avery's lip and sent him sprawling. It was sheer luck that he didn't crack his head on the floor. Through swimming vision, Avery watched the alien snatch Morgan by the throat and thrust him up into the air without even a grunt. Samantha's laser blast caught the creature in the side, eliciting an ear-splitting shriek that set Avery's teeth on edge. The alien hurled Morgan into Samantha and Vic like a rag doll, their bodies crumpling in a tangle of limbs. "Vanessa! Jake!" Avery shouted, his voice raw. "Distract it." The duo leapt into action, but the creature's inhuman speed and strength made their efforts seem futile. Its blade sang through the air, missing Jake by millimeters and leaving a molten gash in a nearby bulkhead. Pain rocked up Avery's leg. He looked down and saw the robot's vice-like hand latched onto his ankle. Yeah, the robot was down, but obviously still functioning despite its dismemberment. Avery blasted it without thinking, his heart thundering in his chest as the robot's cold fingers dug into his flesh. A blur of green metal distracted him. Ethan swung the robot's discarded sword at the alien's back. The alien turned around, too late. The green sword separated its head from its body in a spray of black liquid. For a moment the creature stood twitching before folding to the floor. Silence overtook them, broken only by ragged breathing and the hum of failing systems. The stench of blood and something alien filled the air. Avery's gaze swept the cargo bay, cataloging injuries and absences. His eyes fell on Tara, kneeling beside Omar's still form. No, not Omar. Ethan. Avery croaked, gesturing weakly. Help Omar. But Ethan's grim shake of the head confirmed the obvious, and Tara's silent tears spoke volumes. Avery closed his eyes to collect his thoughts. 2 more dead. He couldn't save Omar, or Martha, just like he couldn't save Marigold. Avery opened his eyes. He couldn't save anyone. Chapter 8. Vorak watched in silence as Thorin's head soared from his head before bouncing twice on the deck. Zalith had lost his bet with Sivra. Vorak, however, had lost everything. Well, not everything, he schooled himself. Thorin and Ragnar had paid him up front. Plus, there was no one who could tie him to their deaths except for the 2 thrall watching the ship's screens alongside him. Telling would naturally incriminate both Sivra and Zaleth, as well as sign a death warrant for them all. Hunting humans, utterly thrilling, and incredibly expensive as it was dangerous due to the Coalition's damnable restrictions regarding Earth, which provided him with the impetus to launch an exclusive club of hunters catering to the sublimely wealthy. Humankind was certainly not the first sentient beings he organized hunts for, but they were such adaptable little creatures. Plus, their physiology made genetic tampering easy. Humans were also incredibly unpredictable, except for the dying part. All prey died in the end. Sivra drained her glass, the pungent scent of fermented juice filling the command center.
So, what now?
Vorak dished up a crooked smile.
We call off the hunt.
The gills on Zaleth's head bristled.
Unacceptable. The prey must die anyway.
Sivra hissed, her claws tapping against her empty glass.
Why not savor it?
The obnoxious witch had a point. The logical part of his brain, however, screamed caution. Jettisoning the humans into space would be the most prudent thing to do. Still, the allure of the hunt, and the money, yes. The temptation was strong, and it had been so very long since he himself had partaken in a hunt, and these human prey were proving to be quite the challenge. Damn Thorin for attacking Morgan. He was hoping to get at least one more group of prey from the human before he gutted the wretch.
Very well.
Vorak growled.
But you'll each have 2 bodyguards. Non-negotiable.
Sivra's eyes narrowed.
Then we want refunds.
Vorak's jaw tightened, but he nodded.
Done.
With a single click on the tactical console, Vorak pulled up a holographic schematic of the ship. The humans appeared as pulsing red dots, clustered together in the ship's playground section. At the moment, they believed they were inside a cargo bay. Shroud interface technology made this possible. The addition of sensory detail placed this cutting-edge technology far higher than simple holographics.
We'll move them to Section E.
Vorak explained, his voice low and guttural.
Zaleth, you launch from C. Sivra, B. I'll drive them from Section D.
Zaleth's tongue flicked out in disapproval.
Section A remains open. It leads to your precious command center.
Vorak's lips curled in disgust.
The implants ensure the humans see only what I want them to. And their wristbands, as you have witnessed, track every twitch they make.
Sivra leaned forward, her breath hot.
We should take down their leader first.
She jabbed a claw at the screen above them, indicating a lean human.
The one called Avery.
Vorak studied the figure before responding. The humans appeared to gravitate around him. Ironic, since he was virtually useless in a fight and possessed no real special abilities except for the voice. Usually those given the voice were killed quickly in level 1. Yet this human was using his psychic enhancements to coordinate the prey into a force deadly enough to vanquish 2 thrall warriors. A cruel smile spread across Vorak's lips, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Yes, Avery would be one of the humans they killed first.
Agreed,
Vorak said, signaling for a bot to attend them.
Let the hunt begin.
A wave of nausea rolled through Avery, signaling another shift in location. He steadied himself, focusing for a moment on the lush rust-colored sand shifting beneath his boots. The smell of unfamiliar flora tickled his nostrils. Nearby, ancient ruins rose majestically, their weathered stone facades casting long shadows against the backdrop of a misty blue sky. Jake's triumphant whoop shattered the eerie silence.
1,200 points, baby!
He pumped his fist like he had won the lottery.
That's 1,000 for completing the mission, and the rest for killing a robot and some nasty old alien.
Vanessa glared at him.
This game is so unfair.
Tell that to Omar and everyone else who died today.
Tara snapped, her voice raw with emotion. Vanessa's face flushed with embarrassment. An emotion, up to now, Avery thought the woman incapable of. He pulled out a ration bar, its chalky taste a stark contrast to the fantastical world around them. Tara's right. This is more than a game. Isn't it, Morgan? Everyone was basically standing in the same haggard semicircle they were in before the shift away from the cargo. Samantha drew closer to Morgan but stopped short.
What's Avery talking about, Morgan?
Morgan kept his expression blank, his silence more telling than words. Vic waved his cipher node, its holographic display casting a neon blue glow on his face.
I knew it. The robots are real. Just like that massive power source I've been detecting.
You're saying this isn't a game?
Travis's voice cracked with disbelief. Vanessa turned to Avery, her pretty face hard.
Make him tell us the truth, Avery.
Avery hesitated. He didn't want to force Morgan to tell the truth, but he would if he had to. Thankfully, Morgan waved him off before he could make up his mind.
You don't have to use the voice to get me to tell the truth,
he said, then sauntered over to Vic and lowered his voice. Vic's eyes widened in alarm, then relaxed as if he were intrigued about what Morgan was telling him. Ethan turned to Avery.
What does he mean by the voice?
Avery shrugged. Guess he's referring to me being able to get people to listen to me. An understatement. Everyone knew it too. Inexplicably, he could now get people to do whatever he told them to do. The second Morgan finished whispering in Vic's ear, the engineer's fingers started flying over his cipher node device. Travis shifted back and forth on his feet, uneasily.
Can someone please explain what's going on here? Hopefully before we're assigned a new mission.
Let the man finish,
Morgan said. Tara opened her mouth to argue, but Morgan cut her off.
I'll explain when he's done.
A minute or so later, Vic looked up.
We should be able to speak freely now. Without being overheard.
Jake's smile morphed into a smirk.
What do you mean now? Thought we were already speaking freely.
Morgan shook his head in that bad boy way of his.
We're under observation by aliens.
He paused, letting the words sink in.
We've been on their spaceship for over 3 weeks now. And not the fake one with the cargo bay you thought we were in.
Shock lined every face. Even Jake lost his idiot smile as cold dread settled over the group. Tara's voice trembled when she spoke.
You said this was a game.
It is a game,
Morgan said, looking tired.
For the thrall.
Vanessa leaned forward, her curiosity apparently piqued, despite the grim revelation.
Who the hell are the thrall?
And exactly what kind of game are these aliens playing?
Asked Vic.
The aliens who abducted you. They're the hunters.
Morgan's blue eyes turned even colder.
We're the prey.
Jake slipped the hilt of his sword from his hip like it was second nature. His energy sword appeared next.
So why are you telling us now?
Because Morgan didn't think he was prey. Avery could have kicked himself for trusting this man.
Well, that was stupid,
Ethan said, clearly ready to attack Morgan too.
What did you think your role would be?
Morgan's shoulders sagged.
It was my job to procure the players.
This is your fault.
Travis lunged forward, his fist flying. Morgan dodged with uncanny ease, but didn't strike back. Samantha's voice wavered as she tried to process the information.
You're saying those things we killed were aliens?
Morgan nodded.
The thrall. A warrior race. Like I said, they like to hunt. People.
Now Avery was ready to hit Morgan too. Why did you sell us out? You're fellow humans. Morgan looked away, so Avery used the voice. Tell me why. Morgan's face contorted as he fought Avery's command, but the words spilled out anyway.
For the money. The promise of tech.
Vic snorted.
Stupid to trust the thrall.
Morgan's face fell. He looked like he aged 10 years in a matter of minutes.
Kinda realized that when the thrall in the cargo bay attacked me.
Travis was back on his feet, readying to strike out against Morgan a second time. Ethan held him back. He wasn't as muscular as Travis, but he was as wide and almost as tall.
So what do we do now?
Tara's voice was barely above a whisper.
Yeah, Mr. Leader Man,
added Vanessa as she put her canteen back into her satchel.
We did whack 2 of their people.
Jake flashed Vanessa an oily smile.
I like your choice of words.
Vanessa gave him the finger before returning her disdain back on Avery. Clearly, she held him responsible for the mess they were in. Morgan straightened his leather jacket.
We tried to take the ship's command center. Hijack the ship back to Earth.
What's to stop the aliens from simply blowing us out of an airlock?
Vanessa's question was a good one, but of course Morgan had an answer.
They won't. The thrall love their hunts way too much.
The ancient ruins, the reddish sand. Hell, the aliens' holographic technology could even create smells. Avery looked around. Once again, everyone was waiting for his decision. Hopefully it wouldn't be another bad one. Okay, we go along with Morgan's plan. Tara's eyes flashed with anger.
You're agreeing with a man who we dare not trust?
Vanessa snorted.
Morgan's almost as bad as some of my ex-boyfriends.
We can trust Morgan now, Avery said, locking eyes with Tara. Jake pointed his energy sword at Morgan.
I say that we gut the traitor and be done with it.
Avery turned to Morgan. The man didn't look repentant at all. Can I give you a mental command demanding loyalty? Moments stretched before Morgan nodded.
They've been watching us since the rotunda on level 1.
Morgan admitted, his voice hollow. Samantha's face paled.
So they know how we act.
Worse,
Vic added grimly.
They know how we fight.
Wait a minute,
said Ethan, moving toward Morgan.
You said these guys are aliens?
Morgan nodded.
I don't know where they're from, if that's what you're asking. Definitely not from our solar system. I'm not sure I'm buying this whole hunted prey thing.
Jake took a swig of water from his canteen.
I mean, why give us these cool weapons and enhanced abilities if they just want to kill us? It's all for the sport,
Morgan said, taking a bite from his ration bar.
Makes things more challenging.
I scanned everyone here.
Vic's eyes looked haunted.
Not only did the thrall give us these suits and weapons, they physically altered us, down to our DNA.
Vic waved his cipher note in Avery's direction.
Especially Avery. Your brain.
A jolt of anxiety shot through Avery. Tara's reaction was worse.
I just want to get back to my kids.
Then you're going to have to fight for it,
Morgan said.
They'll definitely be targeting you and the human punching bag over there.
He nodded towards Travis, who visibly bristled at the analogy. Vanessa nodded, her tactical mind kicking in.
Makes sense. Get rid of Tara and the punching bag, and there go our defenses.
The name's Travis.
Vic ignored him, his face grim.
Since Ethan's a healer, they'll probably want to get rid of him too.
Morgan's gaze settled on Avery.
Not as much as they want to get rid of our de facto leader.
All eyes turned to Avery. He felt the weight of their stares, the pressure of their hopes and fears. Not long ago he would have given up. Maybe just let the thrall kill him. What was life without Marigold anyway? But she told him to live. Live long. Okay then, Avery said, his voice steady. We know that these aliens know all about our abilities and weaknesses, and how we fight. He paused, letting his words sink in. So, if we're ever going to make it home, guess we'll have to change things up a bit.
Oh, great.
Vanessa cooed.
Another one of your brilliant plans.
Avery didn't take the bait, instead addressing Morgan. How many Thrall and robots are we dealing with?
3 Thrall. 7 to 10 robots left. I think.
He thinks,
hissed Travis. They didn't have time for the snipping, since they hadn't received a new mission yet that suggested that the Thrall were on their way. Avery turned to Vic. Can you deactivate the robots? That would improve their chances, slightly. Vic's face reddened, but eventually he nodded.
I scanned one of the robots back in the corridor. They appear to be connected to a central hub. Perhaps...
Just do it, Vic. Avery refocused his attention on the group. We need to protect Ethan at all costs. He's the only one capable of fixing us if we get hurt. And Avery had little doubt that some of them would get hurt, if not killed. Vanessa.
Yes, oh mighty one.
I need you to take charge. Chapter 9. It was strange covering their 6, as Morgan called it, instead of taking point. That was Travis and Jake's job, and Vanessa's call. Samantha was paired with Vic in the middle, while Ethan and Tara teamed with Vanessa, leaving Avery stuck with Morgan defending their rear as they raced toward the ship's bow. Definitely not the way Avery would have played it, but then again, that was the point. The Thrall knew how he would organize their little cluster and would plan accordingly. Avery's eyes darted back and forth as they tore through the Thrall ship's twisted corridors, moving faster than should be humanly possible. Thanks to Vic, gone was the fantasy landscape. Instead, they were surrounded by a ship that appeared to be some grotesque mixture of metal and organic, not unlike the disgusting spiders and rats they had previously fought. This particular corridor was wide with bioluminescent veins pulsing overhead, bathing them in a creepy green light. Honestly, the whole place made his skin crawl. Morgan seemed totally unbothered by the spectacle, periodically checking to see if they were being followed, while Avery found himself swallowing hard, trying to keep the gnawing dread at bay. How many of them would make it out this time? His stomach twisted at the thought of these people, new friends perhaps, being erased in the blink of an eye. Some of them, perhaps all of them, weren't going to be alive an hour from now.
"Look out!"
shouted Travis. Giant globs of the ceiling rained from above and splattered against the metal deck, blocking their way forward. The globs wobbled, then grew and morphed into glowing amber cocoons the size of overfed boa constrictors.
Incredible,
Vic said, moving closer and aiming his cipher node device at the squirming cocoons. This all felt so wrong. Evil. No. Deadly. Avery's shout died in his throat as the first cocoon ripped open. It wasn't the fleshy tearing sound that chilled him, but rather the metallic screech coming from the insect-like thing inside the cocoon. The creature tore away the cocoon skin with its razor-sharp limbs. Its glistening exoskeleton reflected the cold, sterile light like polished obsidian. Part crunchy skin, part metal. It moved with a sickening fluidity and grabbed a hold of Vic's right arm.
Travis, help Vic.
Vanessa grabbed Samantha by the arm.
Lay down suppressive fire.
What?
Vanessa opened her mouth for a nasty retort, but opted for blasting the other cocoons, which were already opening up.
Fire, damn it!
Samantha took a deep breath and aimed her laser blasts to catch as many of the emerging creatures in a crossfire. Avery moved to assist, but Morgan slapped a hand on his shoulder and shook his head. He was right. They needed to hold their position to guard their rear. Still, Avery couldn't get the shouts out of his head, worsened by the creatures that were probably being used to delay them from reaching the command center. Each movement of the creatures was accompanied by the scrape of metal on metal, a symphony of wrongness that set Avery's teeth on edge. But it was their eyes that froze Avery's blood, orbs of molten gold that pulsed with alien hunger. As one, the creature's maws yawned open, revealing a hellish inferno within. The air filled with shrieks as gouts of plasma erupted from their throats, turning the corridor into a gauntlet of liquid fire. Avery dove out of the way, the scorching heat singeing his hair. He watched in horror as one of the monstrosities skittered up the bulkhead, defying gravity, its barbed legs punching divots into the alien alloy. The insectoid horrors moved with unnatural speed. That didn't stop Morgan from shooting them down, while Jake cackled as he used his energy sword to slash the alien creatures into puddles of amber slime. A minute, maybe a lifetime later. Nothing but bioluminescent slime stood before them as they nursed their wounds. Avery, still trying to process what just happened, cataloged their situation. Tara and Samantha, no signs of blood or significant damage. Vic's left arm hung by his side, lifeless, and Vanessa, looking more pissed than usual. Ethan's beefy hand rubbed his left quadricep. The large man noticed Avery staring at him, and the blue glow emanating from his gloved hand.
Guess I should be glad that I got healing power instead of a fancy weapon like Jake.
Vanessa didn't look up from inspecting her laser rifle.
Stop gloating and fix up Vic.
Ethan looked like he was ready to tell Vanessa what to do with her rifle. Instead, common sense won out. Without Vic, there was absolutely no way they would figure out how to get this ship back to Earth, even if they somehow made it to the command center.
You're a miracle worker.
Vic flashed Ethan a smile, all the while shaking his left arm like he was trying to jiggle away any remaining numbness. A sudden movement in front snagged Avery's attention. Before anyone could react, a silver-colored robot, smooth and all angles, stepped into the corridor. Its head swiveled in their direction. Avery wanted to scream a warning as its arm morphed into a nasty-looking weapon.
Watch out!
Travis threw his wide frame between the group and the robot's energy blaster discharged with a crackling buzz, sending a bolt of crimson energy slamming into Travis's chest. His armor absorbed the shot, but the force still sent him staggering back a step. Vic started forward.
Maybe I can...
No.
Vanessa snapped, her eyes locked on Jake.
Make yourself useful.
Jake's lips curled into a wolfish grin.
I expect a kiss for saving your ass, darling.
You can kiss my ass, darling. Now take that thing down.
Jake ignited his energy sword with a reckless flourish, the sword sizzling back to life. He lunged forward, moving with blistering speed. The robot barely had time to register the threat before Jake's sword cleaved through its metal body, starting with the head and slicing clean through its torso. The machine collapsed into one big metal heap. Jake, sweating but smiling, pointed his energy sword at Vanessa.
Remember your promise. I get to kiss your ass.
Will you give it a rest already?
Jake winked at Samantha.
Kill aliens first. Rest later, honey.
Morgan shoved Avery before he could react. A second later, a searing stream of red light swept past him and drilled a hole in the corridor bulkhead, missing Avery by inches. Tara reacted instantly, her hands weaving desperate patterns in the air. A blazing white barrier materialized just in time, deflecting 2 more laser blasts. Avery spun around just as the group's attention locked onto an imposing figure standing behind him at the end of the corridor. A towering alien warrior, its eyes cold and lifeless like it had seen death too many times to care. Flanking it were 2 more silver-toned robots, their green energy swords looking sharp and murderous. The alien's left hand rested on the hilt of a brutal jagged blade at its side. It watched them with a chilling calm. Avery glanced at Morgan. Thanks.
Just move.
Morgan growled and fired a volley of blasts at their latest attackers.
No.
Vanessa rushed back to Avery and Morgan and fired her laser rifle at the robots headed their way.
We stay and take out that guy first.
Avery felt the weight of his team's expectant gazes, silently urging him to take charge. Every instinct screamed at him to act, but he swallowed his impulse. Explain. Quickly. Vanessa kept firing as the robots advanced through the corridor for all the good it did.
They're hurting us. We can't let them dictate the battlefield.
Avery looked to Morgan, who nodded. Agreed. Avery raised his laser rifle and started firing at the robots. They would be on them in seconds. Complaints rippled through the group as 2 robots charged forward, their metallic feet clanging against the ship's strange alloy floor. Vic and Ethan opened fire, their laser rifles spitting crimson bolts that ricocheted off the robots' bodies, leaving holes in some, but not enough to stop them completely. While the two silver robots closed in, the overly muscled alien hung back, firing precise bursts that forced everyone but Tara to duck and weave. The air started to fill with the smell of scorched metal as laser fire sizzled past.
Vic!
Vanessa shouted.
Shut the damn robots down, now!
Vic's fingers blurred across the holoscreen floating above his cipher node.
I'm trying.
Sweat beaded on his forehead as he furiously tapped commands. Avery barely ducked in time before a robot's sword removed his head, instead slashing a nasty gash in the bulkhead. It recovered faster than Avery did and swung its sword back for the final strike, then froze mid-swing, inches away from Avery's neck.
I don't know how long before they reboot.
Avery didn't care. He wasn't dead. Yet. Unfortunately, the alien had closed the distance. Its massive fist lashed out, catching Morgan squarely in the chest. The impact sent him flying into the bulkhead with a sickening thud. The alien spun around, its cold, dead eyes now locked onto Avery. In a blur of motion, it seized him by the collar and raised a meaty fist for a final devastating blow. A purple energy whip snaked through the air, wrapping around the alien's wrist. It howled in pain, releasing Avery as it stumbled back.
Trouble coming, left flank!
Travis shouted from the front.
Hold your position.
Vanessa snapped her whip back before the alien could grab it.
Tara, cover our flank.
Tara's voice wavered.
I'll try.
From his position on the floor, Morgan fired his weapon. The shot caught the alien in the side, eliciting a roar of fury. It backhanded Avery and Samantha in one swing, sending them sprawling, before lunging at Morgan with a murderous snarl. Dazed, Avery blinked away stars. Are you okay?
No,
Samantha said with a groan. Avery's vision cleared just in time to see a second alien enter the fray. This one was smaller, lacking the furry mane of its companion, but rippling with lean muscle. Its movements were blindingly fast as it dodged laser fire from Ethan and Vic. Tara threw up a shield of swirling white light, but the new alien performed an impossible flip, sailing over the barrier. It landed behind Tara and executed a vicious side kick, sending Tara crashing to the floor. Her shield winked out of existence. The alien aimed a pistol at Samantha, still recovering on the floor, and fired point blank. Samantha cried out and vanished simultaneously, reappearing right behind the alien. It adapted instantly, sliding backward and driving an elbow into Samantha's ribs. Samantha gasped and clutched her stomach, letting her weapon clatter to the floor. The corridor was anything but narrow, but it provided absolutely no cover against homicidal aliens or room for tactical fighting. Not that Avery knew how to fight tactically. A metal sphere whizzed past Avery's face, missing him by a hair's breadth before embedding itself into the bulkhead. The first alien, its azure fur singed and matted, beckoned to Avery with a cruel smile and a wave of its claw. This close, Avery could see that the alien possessed 4 fingers. It was the long, broad fingernails that made its marble brown hands look like claws.
Don't, Avery.
Morgan's voice was strained.
He's 3 times stronger than you.
Avery kept his eyes on the monstrous alien in front of him. Then back me up. Avery charged forward, hoping his newfound speed would keep him alive. He ducked and weaved and didn't land any punches. Not a problem, since he was more focused on buying time than landing solid hits. If he could just keep this thing busy, the others might stand a chance. Out of the corner of his eye, Avery saw Morgan raise his weapon, but the alien was faster. A laser blast caught Morgan in the shoulder, spinning him around. In that split second of distraction, the alien's fist connected with Avery's chin. The world tilted as he crashed to the floor, tasting blood. A chilling war cry announced the arrival of a third alien, even larger than the first 2. It wielded a sword that seemed to drink in the light around it, leaving streaks of darkness in its wake. That didn't deter Jake one bit from charging at it, sword swinging.
Stay still, damn it.
Jake spat, his energy sword slicing through empty air. The new alien, fur as black as the void of space, grabbed Travis and slammed him into Jake. Nearby, the second alien was systematically handing Ethan his ass. Its razor-sharp claws tore through Ethan's suit's breastplate, while simultaneously stomping on Tara. Vic's agonized scream cut through Avery's dizziness as the third alien's energy sword slashed a vicious gash on his belly. It moved with terrifying speed, like a more disciplined and far deadlier version of Jake. The brutality of it all hit Avery like a punch to the gut. They were losing. Badly. "Switch it up, people!" he shouted, getting back to his feet. He was grateful that Vanessa didn't countermand the order. Before Avery could capitalize on the moment, the third alien snatched him up and slammed him against the bulkhead.
"Let him go, Vorak."
The alien completely ignored Morgan and tightened its grip. Avery's vision swam, darkness threatening to overtake him. He could feel the alien's hot, rancid breath on his face. Its grip tightened, claws digging into his chest. Through the haze and pain, he watched the alien draw a wickedly serrated knife from its belt. Knowing he was about to die, Avery found himself looking into the alien's soulless brown eyes. "Stop! Stop!" The words weren't his own. It didn't even sound like his voice. To his utter astonishment, the alien froze, its expression shifting from murderous rage to blank confusion. The knife, poised inches from Avery's face, trembled in its grasp. Could it be that the voice also worked on the thrall? A purple streak of light wrapped around the alien's wrist. Vanessa's energy whip sizzled against its flesh, forcing it to drop the blade. Samantha materialized, her gun pressed against the alien's head. Even then, its reflexes were inhumanly fast. Samantha's shot merely grazed its face instead of obliterating it. But it left him open to Jake, who shoved his energy sword through its back. Avery gasped in relief as the mountainous alien plunged to the floor. Another few inches, and Jake's sword would have gone through him too. Avery followed Vanessa's gaze. Travis and Morgan were tag-teaming the last alien, driving it to the ground in a frenzy of blows and energy blasts. As it fell, an eerie silence descended in the corridor and was broken just as quickly by Jake. 1 foot on top of the dead alien's back, Jake thumped at his wristband.
"Wonder how many points I earned for killing this joker."
Avery sighed. "Jake, please stop or I'll do any one of the horrible things I could do to you." Jake simply grinned, but he knew what the power of the voice could do now. They all did. Avery stumbled towards Vic, fighting off waves of nausea and exhaustion. Ethan knelt beside the engineer, his healing gloves pulsing with soft light.
"I'm all right,"
Vic said, wincing as the wound across his belly slowly closed. Avery managed a weak smile. "You better be. You're the only one here who has a remote chance of flying this ship back to Earth." The joke fell flat, but he got smiles anyway. They were alive, battered, exhausted, but alive. Chapter 10.
Carter!
The sounds of tapping computer keys stopped instantly as Stars and Stripes customer relations manager Ms. Shapiro wove her way through the cubicles like a shark cutting through water. Trouble was coming, and no one dared to breathe. Avery shuddered, then scolded himself as he continued cleaning out his desk. Shapiro, as scary as the harpy was, didn't hold a candle to the thrall. If the aliens returned, perhaps they could use Shapiro as a weapon against them. That thought made Avery smile.
"Better lose that smile,"
his coworker Wilson said, staring at Avery from the adjacent cubicle.
"Don't want to end up on the unemployment line, do you? Especially since you took off all those days."
Avery didn't even look at the man. Wilson would probably love it if he were fired. Way too late for that. Avery paused from packing and gazed at the beautiful photograph of Marigold. "Live a long life," she told him. He would try, but he would always miss her. An uncomfortable tingle in his shoulders hit Avery as Shapiro's shadow fell across his desk. The stale office air, tinged with the scent of cheap coffee and desperation, seemed to thicken as she loomed over him.
"What do you think you're doing, Carter?"
Shapiro hissed. Avery continued methodically packing his belongings, unfazed. "Leaving." Shapiro's nostrils flared.
"You should be groveling to keep your pathetic job after your unauthorized absence. No one takes 4 weeks off without consequences. Why management hasn't fired you, I don't know."
A smirk tugged at Avery's lips. If only she knew those 4 weeks had involved battling alien hunters and commandeering their spaceship. As for why management hadn't fired him. Vic had hacked into Stars and Stripes' computers and found some very incriminating evidence regarding upper management's illegal activities. I quit.
Impossible,
Shapiro spat, her face contorting.
No one quits Stars and Stripes. Even a simpleton like you should know how scarce jobs are.
Avery met her gaze, feeling the familiar tingle of the voice stirring within him. Be quiet. Shapiro's mouth snapped shut and her eyes glazed over. Avery stood up and leaned in close, his voice low and warm. From now on, you're going to be super nice and helpful to everyone in customer relations. Avery paused, pointing at Wilson's cubicle. Except for that guy. Fire him. As if on autopilot, Shapiro marched over to Wilson's desk.
You're terminated, effective immediately.
Wilson's face reddened, fists clenching as he glared at Avery. Without breaking eye contact, Avery spoke again. Finish your coffee by dumping it in your lap. Horror dawned in Wilson's beady eyes as his body betrayed him, and he upended a steaming mug of coffee onto his own lap. Wilson's shrill cry echoed throughout the office as curious heads popped up over cubicle walls. Shapiro shook her head at the man, then turned back to Avery.
Oh, Avery, I do hope you're not really leaving us.
Avery slipped Marigold's photo into his backpack. I am.
Well, please don't hesitate to call me if you need anything.
Shapiro gushed before shooting Wilson a venomous look.
You have 5 minutes before I call security.
The elevator dinged, and Vanessa sauntered into view. Her presence, along with a vacuum-tight red skirt, seemed to suck the oxygen from the room as every head turned to stare, particularly the men. She navigated the maze of cubicles with effortless grace, coming to a stop beside Avery. Thought Samantha was picking me up, Avery said, making a point of keeping his eyes above her neck. Vanessa shrugged.
She found something better to do. We'll meet up later. Tara's out. Kid stuff. Travis might be late.
Vanessa's eyes roamed the office, nose wrinkling slightly.
This place is exactly how I imagined. Beige and boring. Suits you.
A wicked grin spread across her lips.
Sure you don't want to stay?
Avery chuckled. You could never truly escape the Shapiros of the world. At least this one had his back. Besides, perhaps, one man, one voice, could make a difference. Or at the very least, protect Earth from aliens with bad intentions. Let's go. Vanessa gestured toward the aisle.
After you, boss man. After you.
Prey. Written by Savage Tempest.